You've probably passed a semi-truck at night 1,000 times without thinking twice. You see the lights, amber running down the sides, red at the corners, a row across the roof, that bright striped tape outlining the whole trailer, and your brain files it under big truck, dark road, needs to be visible, makes sense, seems obvious, but here's what that explanation misses. Every one of those lights is in a specific position. Every one is a specific color. The number of lights in that row on the roof is not an accident. The fact that the sides are amber and the rear is red is not an aesthetic choice. And every truck on every road in America has to be configured exactly the same way, down to the precise mounting position and minimum brightness of each individual light. This is not decoration. This is not general visibility. What you have been looking at every time you have passed a truck at night is a federal language, a system of visual communication built over decades of accident data, standardized by federal regulation, that tells you the exact physical footprint of that truck in the dark. And every driver on the road has been reading it without knowing they were literate. The answer to why it works this way has 3 parts. Most people only ever hear the first one. By the end of this, you will have all 3, and you will never look at a truck at night the same way again. Let's start with what everyone assumes, and why that assumption barely scratches the surface. The obvious answer, when someone asks why trucks have so many lights, is visibility. Big vehicle, dark road, needs to be seen. And that is not wrong. But it explains almost nothing about why the lights are where they are, why they are the colors they are, or why there are so many of them in precisely those configurations. Here is what the lights are actually doing. The amber lights at the very front corners of the truck, those are clearance lights. They mark the outermost width of the vehicle at the front. The red lights at the rear corners mark the outermost width at the rear. Together, those 4 lights trace the 4 corners of the truck's footprint, like pins on a map. They are not telling you the truck is there. They are telling you exactly where the truck ends, on both sides, front and rear. That is a different kind of information. A distant tail light tells you there is a vehicle ahead. Clearance lights tell you how much space it occupies. And then there are the marker lights running down the full length of the sides. Those exist to communicate something specific about the shape of the vehicle in the dark, to trace the boundary of the truck between its front corners and its rear corners, so that anyone looking at the truck from an angle does not have to guess where it ends. The lights are not scattered around the truck for general illumination. They are positioned to draw an outline. But if clearance lights communicate with, and side markers trace the boundary, what exactly are those 3 amber lights doing in a row across the roof of the cab? They are not marking width. The clearance lights already do that. They are not tracing the side. The marker lights handle that. 3 lights in a row on the roof. Not 2, not 4. Always 3. And they mean something very specific. That's not coincidence. That's not aesthetic. That row of 3 lights is a federal declaration, and it carries a legal meaning that every truck driver in America has to understand before they can legally operate their vehicle. Those 3 amber lights across the top of the cab are called identification lights. They exist for one single, specific reason: to tell every other driver in the vicinity that this vehicle is wider than 80 inches. 80 inches, 6 feet 8 inches. Under federal regulations, any commercial vehicle that exceeds that width is required, not suggested, to display exactly 3 identification lights in a row. The number 3 is the signal. 3 lights mean the vehicle exceeds 80 inches in total width. If you have ever tried to pass a truck on a 2-lane road at night and felt unsure whether there was enough room, those 3 lights were the system trying to answer that question for you. You just did not know the vocabulary. This is codified in Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 108, FMVSS 108. It was first issued in 1967 and has governed vehicle lighting in the United States ever since. The standard does not just require having enough lights to be seen. It specifies which lights, in which positions, at which mounting heights, emitting which colors, at which minimum intensities, and from which angles. This is not a suggestion. A truck that does not comply with FMVSS 108 can be pulled out of service at the roadside by a federal inspector. The lighting configuration is not how trucks happen to look. It is a legal requirement with specific enforcement consequences. And the color assignments are not arbitrary. Amber is federally designated for the front and sides of vehicles. Ready is federally designated for the rear. This means a driver approaching a stopped truck from the front sees only amber. A driver following sees only red. If you see red lights facing you, you are looking at the back of a vehicle, not the front, without exception on every road in the United States. The color is a direction indicator written in light. This explains the cab and its lighting, but it still does not explain all the lights down the full length of the trailer. The cab is roughly 8 feet long. The trailer it is pulling is 53 feet, and the trailer is the part that has been quietly killing people. A 53-foot semi-trailer is roughly the length of 4 passenger cars placed end to end. When it is attached to a cab, it extends 40 feet behind the point most drivers look at when they see a truck. In the dark, on an unlit highway, that 40-foot extension was, for much of American trucking history, essentially invisible. Accident investigators in the early 1960s began documenting a specific crash type that did not fit the standard categories: a driver at highway speed, a truck stopped at an intersection, or moving slowly across a driver's path. There was no impact with the cab. The cab was visible. The impact was with the trailer. The driver had seen the truck's lights, judged that the truck was ahead of them and to one side, and driven directly into the trailer's side or rear, which extended across their path in total darkness. Investigators called these phantom vehicle collisions. You could see the truck, you could not see the vehicle. The interstate highway system, which began construction in 1956 and grew rapidly through the 1960s, had created a new kind of driving environment: high-speed travel on long, straight, dark roads where passenger cars and heavy commercial trucks shared lanes at 70 miles per hour. That combination had not existed before in American driving. The trucks of the 1940s and early 1950s had traveled slower roads with more frequent towns and traffic lights. The new interstates removed all of that. They also removed the visual context that made large vehicles readable in the dark. The National Traffic and Motor Vehicle Safety Act of 1966 was signed into law partly in response to this growing body of accident data. It created the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and gave it authority to set binding safety standards for all vehicles sold in the United States. The following year, Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 108 established the first uniform national lighting language for commercial vehicles. Amber side markers every few feet along the trailer, color-coded by position, were required at specific mounting heights on every truck in every state. The patchwork of state regulations that had existed before, where a truck legal in Ohio might not comply with Pennsylvania's rules, was replaced with a single federal standard, readable by every driver on every road. But here's the problem nobody had fully anticipated. The system was built around bulbs, and bulbs burn out. A trailer with a single dead marker light on its side had a gap in its visible outline, a zone of darkness in exactly the place where the light was supposed to be. In good weather, at moderate speeds, this might not matter. At highway speed, in heavy rain, on an unlit rural stretch of interstate, a gap in the marker light sequence was enough to make the trailer's edge geometrically invisible at the moment a driver most needed to see it. This gap was in the system for 25 years before anyone fixed it. And the fix changed nighttime driving everywhere. In 1993, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration finalized a rule that had been years in the making. Starting that year, all trailers 80 inches or wider were required to be equipped with retroreflective conspicuity tape. The bright, striped, reflective tape you now see outlining the full perimeter of every semi-trailer on the road. The tape does not use electricity. It does not require a functioning circuit or a working bulb. It uses tiny glass beads embedded in adhesive reflective sheeting. When a car's headlights strike the tape, those beads do not scatter the light outward the way a painted surface would. They return it directly back toward the source, aimed precisely at the driver's eyes. From 1,000 feet away, in complete darkness, with nothing but your own headlights, the tape makes the entire outline of a 53-foot trailer visible. You are not seeing the trailer. You are seeing your own headlights return to you from its edges. An NHTSA study from 1999 examined crash data from the years following the tape requirement and found that fatal crashes involving the sides of trailers dropped by approximately 29%, and fatal crashes involving the rear of trailers dropped by approximately 44%. One rule, one strip of tape. Tens of thousands of lives over the 3 decades since. And now here's the part that should shift something in the way you see the road. You've been reading this language every time you've driven at night. You just didn't have the vocabulary. The 3 amber lights in a row on the cab roof mean that the truck is wider than 80 inches. The amber clearance lights at the front corners mean that this is where the front edge ends on both sides. The amber side markers running down the length of the trailer mark the edge continuously, from front to rear. The red markers on the rear half of the trailer sides indicate that you are passing the back portion of the vehicle. The red clearance lights at the rear corners mark where the truck ends at the back. And the retroreflective tape, the tape that works whether or not a single bulb on the truck is functioning, outlines the complete 53-foot silhouette of the trailer, readable from 1,000 feet by nothing more than your own headlights reflected back to you. Every truck on the road speaks this language. It was built over 60 years of accident data. It was standardized into law in 1967 and upgraded in 1993. And it has been in your field of vision on every nighttime highway drive of your life. So here's where you actually land. You came in thinking you were looking at lights, maybe safety, maybe regulation, maybe just how trucks are built. But what you were actually looking at was a federal communication system developed over decades of phantom vehicle crashes and accident reports that began accumulating as soon as the interstate system put passenger cars and 80,000-pound trailers on the same dark road at 70 miles per hour. Federal Motor Vehicle Safety, Standard 108, gave every light on that truck a specific legal meaning. The color tells you which end you are looking at. The number of roof lights tells you how wide the vehicle is. The side markers trace the boundary so you know precisely where the trailer ends, even in darkness, even from an oblique angle. And the retroreflective tape, which bounces your own headlights back at you from the exact edges of the trailer, closes the gap that bulbs alone never could. You were not looking at decoration. You were reading a language. Amber means front and sides. Red means rear. 3 lights in a row means over 80 inches wide. Continuous tape means here is the outline of the machine. Every word of it is federal law. Next time a truck passes you on the highway at night, you will read every light, and you will be the only person in the car who knows what any of it says. And if you think the lights on a truck are a hidden language, wait until we get into why every traffic light in America is the exact height it is, and why changing that number by 6 inches would break the entire system.